I'm not too sure anybody was really anticipating things to go in this direction because it's a really weird direction. The whole alchemist aspect of it, like because I think with the treasure hunters, it makes sense if some like complete pinnacle of their class was going into what would be like the equivalent of the 100 Years Quest for treasure hunters. Going to this unconquered labyrinth to get whatever treasures and secrets are in. But now we have like this whole aspect of these alchemists of this guild, Gold Owl, that are involved, and the only thing I'm assuming is there's something to it. Like I don't think Mishima's just introducing enemies just to put enemies in there right now. I don't really know. Like it would be very surprising just to throw some dudes in there, especially mentioning those the girls of the Signario sisters. Like it just seems like one of those like important note pieces to take. Like it's not just said for no reason. Similar to this dude Sai when he was talking to Gray, started freaking out and saying like if he didn't bring back this orb, then he would be killed. So I think as of right now, we're in a really good spot to at least build a case for what's going on. Like we don't have obviously the details, like the context of what's going on with this guild, but we can build theories and kind of just general ideas. Like I have the idea that potentially that this guild, because of the name Gold Owl, like, and I know some people have the idea of obviously Vierna's involvement, but like, what if it's Viernes is the one that was connected to this guild and is trying to get this for whatever his dragon god plans are? But say he's the one that taught humans alchemy. He's like that would make a lot of sense. You have another power source out there in the world, some other like crazy ability set. Nothing connected to magic, its own thing. A dragon being knowledgeable in how this works and say teaching something like different ways of science and how alchemy kind of just varies to humans. I think from like a dragon who's lived like hundreds of years, probably really smart and just knows a lot of stuff. I think that would make a lot of sense. There is the fact that in the fairy tale world there is like the growing aspect of inventions, like we have seen, especially in a lot of the spin-offs, like different ways that like technology and things outside of more magic and fantasy things exist. Like we do have straight up machines and whatnot. And we have had alchemists in the past, like Wall used alchemy, which it's cool to see getting a little bit expanded upon. Makes me miss the guy. And it also makes me wonder like where he would compare to these guys. Probably like better in terms of alchemy, like outright, but who knows about these Signario sisters? Like these might be like, some form of weird kind of like outliers in their own respective area for alchemists. This dude, I expected Sai also to have some form of like tricky technique to use against Gray, though I didn't think he was gonna be an alchemist. I thought the treasure hunter thing was pretty much where it was gonna go because I thought all of it checked in. The alchemy thing was completely out of left field and was very strange. But the dude, and I will say this guy doesn't look very scary. Like he never looked like an intimidating bad guy. He didn't look like he was going to be a big threat. It just looked like obviously somebody that was going to be standing in the way of whatever certain members were going to pretty much pretty much whoever was going to come into contact with him was going to have difficulty in whatever activities they were trying to accomplish, just from some weird new guy who's going to have like whatever other tricks up his sleeve. And whatever tricks he had up his sleeve, I was like, he's probably going to have at least something that is outright not dangerous, but it's just one of those abilities that it's annoying to kind of play against, to kind of like work around. And that's what we did end up getting with like the this like transmutation ability where he swapped Gray and Juvia's bodies, which again is a pretty good power, but it's one of those ones where it can be a outright win or it could completely screw you over. Because like even in their world, like there is definitely more powerful males than females, so the odds are obviously like better in your favor swapping a dude for a chick. But I mean the whole premise obviously of the way the power systems work in the verse, just turning you into somebody into a chick obviously doesn't mean it's gonna really clench you the match. Like these characters don't rely on just outright physical capabilities, and on top of that there are characters that have superhuman kind of like general stats, as we've seen also with stuff like treasure hunters and whatnot, and then just general like martial arts and combat styles. But I mean like even if you excluded that idea, just like the wizards in general, like you should, and it's sort of thing I think that we forget a lot in the verse as well, because it's like wizards only make up 10%, so For this guy, it was way more common for him to run into somebody with no magic than somebody with magic, or swap with somebody with magic versus somebody without magic. But obviously, like I feel like if you were that guy and you're in an environment this high level, like the Doger's Labyrinth, you should assume whoever you're going up against is going to be powerful, and everyone around them is going to be somewhat formidable. Because Julia is powerful. We've known that Julia has been strong since her introduction. And even in points where like the power creep was starting to expand, we knew that she had like levels of potential just kind of layered down and like under pretty much her personality of Julia. Though despite Julia's crazy nature for Gray, and whenever she gets in like one of her situations where she thinks somebody's like a love rival to her, just like besides those, she's obviously really nice and friendly. And we've seen cases where she has like that more like latent potential has come out. Like the biggest one would be Mary's fight back on Sirius Island. It's weird because we haven't seen a lot of like Julia flex like her capabilities since then. But I do think Gray, like Julia's done stuff obviously, but she hasn't been in that same kind of that position where she's got that the whole latent power kind of springing up thing, some form of giant boost like that. Her other fight she won with Keys, being some hacks ways of her ability to turn into water going in his body and exploding out. But I do think that Gray, when he's like saying that you wouldn't expect to turn me into a woman who's stronger than me, I don't think he means that like literally by power levels. I think that's kind of like with Natsu with Urza, or like with Gray with Mira Jane, where it has more to do with their characters and how he, pretty much how they view them. Also similar to like Natsu with Makarov or Happy. It's just one of those perspective things of how they view them as an overall person and the whole package, and not just outright power levels. Gray does explain it to this dude pretty quickly, and we do get some information that was pretty valuable. And Gray's like saying, pretty much like, are you a member of Diabolos? Sai's saying, they're the number one wizard guild on the continent. That's pretty cool. I like that. That just pretty much puts Diabolos in a good standing position. That obviously says their strength, and obviously gives us a bit of like lore and standing with them. And on top of that, I will say though, like real quick, was when he says like, when Gray's like, oh, so Diabolos was that powerful guild, and Sai's just like, oh, for a wizard guild anyways. Like, dude, you gotta watch yourself. I don't know how powerful the top alchemists are gonna be in his guild, but there's no shot they're anywhere close to like Suzaku or Kirin, and despite her shortcomings, Misaki, and the goofiness of Haku, there's no shot they're even close to any of those four. Like if the Signario sisters are like Kyria, Scolion, Madmo level guys that can contend with like Wraith and Nibaru, I could see that as like completely fine. If again, the peak of these areas being able to contend with some of these other big areas, I think it's fine. Because they're supposed to be the biggest area. If their biggest area is high, but not to where it gets weird in the story. Because people like a lot of the Spriggan, for example, a lot of the regular Spriggan, like not the like special ones like Irene, August, Larcade, people like Brandish, to a degree Demaria, Nineheart, Invul, who are just really powerful. Like they have that latent kind of they're just they have that kind of like OP-ness of like high level of potential, ability, talent. Kind of like, obviously we've seen other characters like Urza. Well, Urza's a little different, but like Gray, Lucy, really, because like the Heartfilius have like a deep connection to the story, but they don't have anything that directly connects them to like something crazy like dragon slaying and whatnot. But you know where I'm kind of going at, where it's like characters who just have like they were gonna grow up and be like powerful characters in this generation, just based off of personal abilities, latent potential, and all that kind of stuff. So like characters that are big in their own area being able to contend with that, it's like when you get past that and you get to like big lore important characters like August, Irene, Zareth, like when you get to characters like that, and it's like you gotta be careful what characters you put there, because obviously those characters are there for specific reasons that have a lot of backstory, context, and a lot of big things in the series. So this guy, I just thought it was funny that he was like, yeah, for a wizard guild. It's like, man, they are absolutely underestimating the hell out of the wizards. And I understand why like factions and stuff and different kind of like profession based things with characters, they would kind of look down on the other ones. Like they're not going to know their full capabilities. But I don't believe for a second that the Gold Owl would take Diabolos. Like I said, they probably got some strong people in there, but it's just the people in there being able to contend with like the big people of Diabolos. And we're not even counting Georg. I know we only know Georg's level based off of being stronger than Suzaku, but I don't think it'll really matter. Like Suzaku, I would assume would just blitz and one shot pretty much anybody in their guild. Maybe the Signario sisters would be able to put up a little bit of a fight, but I doubt they'd be able to really push him to any real notable measure. Despite that, when Ray's explaining it to this guy, and they're apparently the number one alchemist guild, so like I said, like they're the pinnacle. This guild is the top. I feel also that, like I said, the name Gold Owl just has to have something to do, I feel like, with Viernes. And I think if Viernes has some form of cool owl-like dragon, like Gold Owl dragon design, that would be pretty sweet. I bet that would look really amazing. And maybe even like if he is like an alchemy type character, would that make like with the way that he's kind of like super secretive, would he end up being like some form of scientist like individual? Like he's the weird one even amongst the dragon gods, because he was the only one left like pretty much in the dark that Mersobi hadn't even talked to him before. And whatever the reason is, it has to be something significant. And I feel like that's the reason Mishima is introducing Gold Owl in this scenario, because the name I don't think is just a coincidence. When he's explaining the whole thing about the Dogra cores to him, and you have a little bit of back and forth first, and Gray's talking to him. He's like, alchemy's kind of like magic, but alchemy's more like science harnessed in the way that wizards use magic. I would assume that there's a power source involved, unless it's something kind of like how in Rave Master, how there were wizards and characters with certain abilities, but for the most part, like characters with very specific abilities, it was like a very specific kind of skill they just had. It was something they were just born with, like silver claiming. There wasn't a power source for it. Like silver claimers could just manipulate silver, or I can't remember his name, but the dude had telekinesis. So maybe that's going to be the thing with alchemy, or maybe there's like some form of thing that involves your mind, or like certain formulas, or maybe it involves like certain equipment. Maybe they themselves aren't using magic, but say it was like they were humans, but they're using magic tools. Like they're just kind of like wearing the equipment. Kind of like not in the same degree, but kind of like how like Bleach has like Quincy's and stuff, where they aren't a completely different race technically, but they're kind of like a modified version. But obviously way more in the case of using the equipment instead of like having a special power in of itself. So I think the alchemy stuff is very interesting, but like it's when he talks about the Dogra cores, and Gray's explaining like it's not treasure, it's a part of the labyrinth, which was made by a dragon. And he's like, I know that, so it technically makes it treasure, but he's like, this is going to become crucial alchemy material for expanding my guild. The fact that he knows it's dragon related makes me think that whatever they're using it for is dragon related, just because dragon energy and dragon things in the Fairy Tail verse all have its own kind of like special reason why exactly it is the way it is, why it requires a dragon related power source, and it usually ends up having some big significant thing that it does. So whatever they have planned, I feel like Mishima isn't just saying it to say it. Maybe it's going to relate to one of the weapons that LF Seri was talking about. I think if he's setting something up with Viernes, that would be the most beneficial thing out of this, because it's say like if he's just setting up another plot point, like this is a brand new plot line, there's no connection to any of the dragon gods, it's a brand new thing that's going on, that's still cool, and it's still something that's interesting. Obviously, like we would have to wait to see really how it folds out, but if it's something just completely standalone, I feel like it'd be really weird to be in this arc. I feel like it has to be mentioned for a specific reason. So if it has to do with Viernes and it leads to some information on Viernes during this whole arc with Dogremag, I think it would make this fight more valuable and not just feel like Mishima threw in this guy to kind of like mess around with Gray for a little bit. Though we did get some important lore stuff. We got, well, I'd say like some bits of lore stuff. Maybe not like big important. We got some stuff on Diabolos, which was cool. I like knowing that they're the number one guild in on the continent because it gives us a little bit of an idea of the land itself. Also, it gives us a little bit of information on Diabolos. And then we even got to find out that Gold Owl is it's the number one alchemy guild in the continent as well. Stuff like that I just like. I like those kind of like little bits of notes that you get, like when you get to certain points with characters. Something about them doesn't have to be like a whole bio, but it just like, oh, these guys are ranked this, these guys are known for this, these guys specialize in this. I like stuff like that. I think that's always cool. It's like if they're like, oh yeah, this is a guild that specializes in runes or something, I'd be like, wow, that's really cool. I hope Freed has some involvement with this at some point soon, or there's a callback to some connection to with Freed, or maybe like say if Levy went there and then gained like some form of new upgrade because she's messed with runes to a degree, but she got like some proper teachers and was able to upgrade solid script to a higher level with it. Like things like that, I'll always be like, oh, awesome. Like that, it's just hype in general. But this, I think, which is pretty cool. Like the chapter itself, like it was enjoyable. I think it was for the most part better than last chapter to a degree, because the last chapter was kind of just like a little bit of setup with Doggermag, and the Celine stuff was good. I like the Celine bits, but I mean, like Celine having just like it was a good moment for Celine, but it wasn't the focus of the chapter, so it was just something nice, like right in the center of the chapter. Whereas this one, I think, was good for the bulk of its overall structure, and it wasn't split up into kind of a couple pieces. For a pretty much start to finish chapter on the same subject, I thought it was pretty good. Nothing crazy, wasn't a psycho crazy wild arc. I mean, it's a pretty good arc so far. I really like it. Now that it's not as good, I'd say probably like best in 100 Years Quest so far might be Trasil, but this one's shaping up. It's going to depend on what goes on with Doggermag and how this conclusion goes. If we get a couple more fights, I will say just really quick, Gray and Godriel have to get a good fight before this arc's over, for this arc to really kind of like get a good placement. We can't leave them in the dark. So I think Gray needs a good fight. So far, this Alchemy dude Sai, he's formidable. He hasn't seemed like he's a big threat to Gray, though. He just seems like he's somebody that's a little bit of somebody that at best right now would get like a medium level of difficulty. Not something that would get like a big kind of like good step forward fight. Somebody who would just be kind of like a fight where maybe Gray has like a, some form of revelation. But we got that with Akune, so I don't think that's going to be the case either. Unless it's going to set it up, or this Alchemy dude's going to have a couple more like OP tricks up his sleeve. Meanwhile, Gray, when he's like saying he wants to fight the guy, I will say from Sai's perspective, the disrespect definitely exists when he's like, you're ready to pick a fight with me and not even really taking me as a threat, but you didn't even really know much about alchemy. I definitely, from Sai's perspective, could say like I can see why he's mad of what like the way that Gray was treating him, because like Gray was definitely looking at him like a small fry, and I feel like not just that, but also the way that kind of comes across as like his impression on alchemy was probably insulting to him too. But he does this move where he like grabs his wrists, like his own wrists, and then like pulls them apart, and he uses this ability Love Bond, which trades your bodies with the person you love. And I can see areas where like this would be good, but this feels like, it feels kind of like one of those powers kind of like Nineheart has. Nineheart, before the other Spriggan members died, his power is so convenient in terms of value, because like what if you run into somebody who's strong but they haven't experienced like a close death yet, and then so you can't have anybody to raise and you're just fighting the strong dude with nothing to do. But in this guy's case, he's gonna turn you into someone you love, but like what if the person you love is stronger than you are, or has like just a more dangerous ability? Like say, like I'm trying to think of like another way that it could be just dangerous. Like imagine if somebody really smart was turned into somebody with like a really tricky ability. Like, you just swap them to like, maybe it's not like you're outright as powerful as you were before, but like you can just, know how to use their magic or their abilities, and you could figure out some other like OP way to kind of like work around it. Like something that they wouldn't do with their personality. Like somebody more aggressive with Levy's magic, but someone smarter with it might be able to make like some more kind of like dangerous solid scripts, or just, you know what I mean? Or somebody more ruthless with Freed's magic could probably like early Freed, but to like a much more savage state. Just when you get to that point where you can get in a good lucky spot with this whole Love Bond ability, but I feel like it'd be so easy to screw yourself over with it too. I think it's just one of those circumstantial things. I wouldn't start out a fight like this. That's the only thing I could really say for Sai is I would never start a fight like this without having some form of intel or using it as a trick. Using it to start is like it just feels like it feels like he just kind of like wanted to underestimate Gray for Gray underestimating him. That's the only thing that I think can make sense out of that. At least from the a logical standpoint of like using an ability like this from the go. But once Gray starts trying to pretty much get a grasp on the situation, he tries to use Ice Make magic. Obviously, it's not working. Juvie's not using Ice Make, and while they're kind of just going back and forth, he's just saying like, oh, I have another ability called Rival Bond, which it's useless because you turn into somebody as strong as you. That has to be foreshadowing. That has to be something valuable for the future. To see like what exactly he's going to do with it. Is he going to turn it to Gray? Like, is he going to turn like say this? Let's say it like this. I'll kind of like look at it like a Merity fight where it's like he doesn't have to just use one of his trump cards. He can use them back to back. Magilty Sense or Magilty Link, and then going into like a 3 version. At some point during the fight, once Gray is used to being set up as Juvia, if he uses Rival Bond, but it doesn't turn him into Gray's rival, it turns him into Juvia's rival, so it turns into, like, Lucy. And then Gray, because Gray is smart, the way that Gray's magic works, he's obviously, like, not as much of a utility fighter as Lucy, but I feel like he's smart enough to know how to use her magic and combine it into various ways. Like, if he used something like that, I think that would also really kind of screw him over, but it would be, like, a logical way this ability would get mentioned and used. And it would also tell you a lot about like Lucy's power and stuff too, as well as Juvia. Because if Juvia was like set as like straight having like magic and power at level with Lucy, that would be really impressive for it. It'd just be one of those things where we have to see her fully utilize it. But yeah, this guy, like I said, if early on when I was talking about when most people in the verse are not wizards, it's like 90% people don't have magic. So even if you run into a wizard, there's a good chance if you use this ability on them, you would turn him into somebody with no magic. But again, like this ability is not going to be good in scenarios like this. Because like for instance, I would never use this in this scenario because if this guy's in a guild that is fine being in this dangerous of a place, the people in that guild might be too powerful for you to kind of like take the risk. But Gray, I mean, with the ability swap, it's not like he switched too crazy of styles, going from ice to water. But Julia does know Maker Magic. We have seen that before. She used Water Make Blood back when Gray was hurt during the whole stuff with Invul. So I think that was completely logically placed as well. We do also have a side effect where like Julia turns into Gray, and we have some funny parts with that. I wonder if Mishima's going to do anything else with that other than just like mentioning that as like a little note in there of like how the ability works and make it like a little comedy goof. I'm fine with either. Maybe we'll find out something with that. Maybe there'll be like one of those moments where say Gray and Juvie, because of this, they kind of like are connected a little bit. It may be a little callback to the stuff with Merity, and we have like a really cool moment for them. I will say, if we do anything like that for Gray, I want an upgrade for Gray. I want Gray to have like some form of new thing, because we've been getting that with everybody, and I really want to see what exactly Gray can do with that too. But back to Gray, like he's obviously doing like the normal things that he would do. He starts trying to take off his clothes. Can't do that really with Juvia. And then Sai ends up like transmuting, like making just like a heavy chain attack, which I think is cool. I think that was just like a neat ability. I want to know, does he have anything really dangerous? Like, he's got some neat skills. Like, he's obviously skilled with his chain weapon. His whole love bond ability can be dangerous in a lot of scenarios. But I want to know if he's gonna have any like real kind of like threat cards to pull out. Because so far I'm not seeing it. Because all he's got right now, and the fight's obviously not over, but I don't see this guy lasting too long. I see maybe another chapter. I'll be surprised if he lasts more than one chapter, unless we go to peer over to something else after this. But he's like swinging his chain attack, and Gray's like, you know, obviously like from his fighting perspective, he's trying to do what he would do and just kind of like move around the fight, do his thing. But once it ends up hitting, it brings about like Juvia's water body, and like if he doesn't have anything beyond the chain and like very regular alchemical melee attacks, then like he's gonna get crushed, because if he can't get past that elemental body, then like what is he gonna do? I feel like he should, considering he's an alchemist, he should have like, because he's not going to be set on, say, like number of spells and techniques. Like his is going to be how he can be smart about it, because alchemy is about science and obviously your environment and stuff. While they're kind of talking, he's saying like, oh, this woman's a wizard too. He's surprised about it. Gray's like making jokes and saying how like he's lucky if he got turned into Urza, then the guy would be done already. And how it's like, you never thought about it, like, what if you turned me into somebody stronger than myself? Again, I don't think Juvia is stronger than Gray. I think that has to do with Gray's perspective. So he's just like, I never really thought of that. Gray's like laughing because he's more in shock because this guy's dumb. But I mean, like, it's not. I feel like in the large scale, if you were to think about the verse in the large scale, it'd be more useful than not. But it's like, it'd be more useful than not the lower you are probably on the totem pole. I feel like the higher you climb for people, you're going to run into less times it's valuable. Because if you really think about it, at least from what I've seen, there's obviously way more powerful males than females. And so you're probably going to run into way more male fighters than female fighters, at least for the most part, like as you climb higher, I would assume. But if you really think about it, like the further you get up, the stronger people are really going to associate with other strong people. So you're only going to keep dwindling your chances, because then once you get to this stage, the people you're going to run into, whether it's like women in the labyrinth or women around people that you're going to run into the labyrinth, they're probably going to be pretty powerful. And Juvia isn't like crazy broken, but it's like Juvia is a very powerful wizard, and like obviously her elemental body is a very useful ability in a lot of situations. When Gray's talking to him, though, he's like, aren't there any powerful women at your guild? And the dude's like freaking out, and he's like, yeah, there's the Signario sisters. I'm guessing they're dangerous, because he starts freaking out and like panicking. He's like, he's like I'm gonna get killed if I don't bring the stone with me. But he started freaking out when he first started talking about the Signario sisters. So I'm guessing they're gonna be dangerous opponents coming up. The exact details I don't know, but I would assume they're going to be, some form. They're going to be probably, in what I would hope, formed up again in the Viernes arc. Because I don't think there's going to be anything other than the fights going right now in the labyrinth. If they're here, that'd be one thing. Like if we see that they are present in the labyrinth, and we're going to get a couple alchemists fighting them while they're like trying to get these stones, okay. But if they're, say, like back at their guild, we're probably not going to see them for a while. It's probably going to be something set up obviously for later. I can see a couple more alchemists here, but like I don't know, the alchemist thing is like so weird. Like, are we going to get a couple more alchemists? Is this who they're really going to be fighting for a bit? I guess maybe, like, it makes me wonder, it's like, is the alchemy thing also set up for Gagiel? Because, like, Gagiel fighting an alchemist would be really interesting, considering he's made of metal. You could probably get a really interesting fight out of that with some form of weird alchemy dude, like, messing with his composition or doing weird stuff all around him. I don't know. There's a lot of strange fights you can do with that. Because, like, I don't think Urza really needs a fight right again. Like, if she's going to have another fight, I feel like it should be with Misaki, or, like, when we get to Dogromag. Laxus doesn't need another fight. It's really just Gagiel. So it's like, if we can get another powerful guy and then like have Gagiel fight him and then get the Signario sisters later, I think that would be great. But at the end of it, Gray's like realizing that he has Juvia's magic. He's not using his magic, and that, I think it makes sense. But he's like putting the pieces together of the connections between water and ice magic. He's like spreading out his abilities and just kind of like really trying to attune with what he's working with. And then he starts trying to use a water make spell, and the dude side's like freaking out, saying like, water alchemy. I think this is pretty cool. I wonder if there's going to be any connections to alchemy and, say, like maker magic or anything larger than like what we kind of have in terms of the powers. Like, are we going to find out more information of like how these abilities work? Is Gray going to get another power? Like, what if Mishima is trying to do this? Like, what if he has Diabolos, and he's gonna now, through Natsu and Suzaku, connect the two guilds together. And then you have Natsu learning, or maybe not learning, rather, but just kind of expanding his Dragon Slayer abilities and like sparring and training, and just kind of like trying to get stronger with other Dragon Slayers to kind of like rise up his character for that, for obviously stuff with Ignia. But Gray ends up doing stuff with this alchemy guild, and then just becomes way better at maker magic and creating things, and like advances himself in that way. I think that would be really cool, as like you essentially have like these two guilds for both of them. Like, I don't really know what Mishima, like, how he would entirely direct that, because it would be really weird if we're gonna. We would have to have some form of time skip, but it's like, where would we fit it in? What would the other characters be doing? What would warrant a time skip, or like what would kind of like set up the build point for that? There's a lot of really neat stuff around this part. Like the chapter itself, I will say the chapter itself wasn't great in its content. Like it was a good chapter. I don't think it was amazing, and I don't think it's content as in say like the barefaced chapter itself. I think the value of it was more in like some of like the little bits we got and the ideas of where this could go. Because I think the whole Gold Owl Alchemy Guild stuff is interesting. It's a really interesting plot point that came out of nowhere. It's weird that we have it in the arc, yes, but I mean it's still something that after like getting bits of it, I can say like, okay, this is kind of cool. Like, what's the plan with this? Is what I want to know right now. Is if they're just like just an enemy guild that's just shown up, maybe they'll come back again later. I'm not gonna be too hyped on that. As long as there's something to build off of this weird bit that we got, which again I think there's stuff that logically we can come out of this with, then that'd be great. But other than that, though, comment below. Tell me your thoughts about this chapter, and tell me what your thoughts are about like what's going on. Because, like I said, I liked it, but the thing that I really enjoyed was just kind of like the ideas of like, okay, where does this point go? Like obviously, like I just talked about, like a guild where Gray would be able to advance his capabilities, and maybe that's why the dude's calling it water alchemy, and why like Gray is the one messing around with an alchemist right now. So we'll see about that. We'll see exactly how that goes. It'd be really cool if Gajil did too. Like, what if Gajil was like there, but he's like going back and forth between both guilds, and he's just kind of taking a 50-50. That'd be pretty cool. Or just him in general, just do something. I require it. But anyway, other than that, comment below. Thumbs up the video, before the like button, subscribe, and check out my other videos. But other than that, I wish you always are. Subscribe. Thank you all for listening. Bye.